Hey everyone, today we're going to start talking about Washington's presidency. So he was elected by the Continental Congress in 1789 upon the passage of the American Constitution. So today we're going to talk about his perception among the American people and some precedents he establishes as our first president of the United States. So most Americans really loved George Washington. They thought of him as an honest man, a hero of the American Revolution, and everybody wanted him to be president. And he was kind of reluctant to do it at first. It's not like a position that he really sought out or campaigned to be. There's a lot of talk about amongst historians about how he was rather reluctant to take the job. So, the way our Constitution has the election set up, as you know, is that electors from the 11 states that had so far passed the Constitution met in January 1789 to vote on the first president. They were the first electoral college, the body of electors who represent the people's vote when choosing the president. They selected Washington unanimously, and they also picked John Adams to be his vice president. The First Lady, as her title goes, is George Washington's wife, Martha Washington, who typically would entertain guests at different social events. So I want to talk about women of the new nation at this point, and kind of what they looked like, what their role was. And the images I have here, I kind of have your like higher, middle, and lower class female and what she probably would have looked like or how she may have dressed. So many people believed that women should have played a greater role in the new nation other than simply entertaining guests, as Martha Washington typically did. However, there was another population that believed women were just important enough by teaching their children to be good citizens and like that was their main role and that was their most valuable role. So there was sort of a mixed emotion in the late 1780s, 1790s about what the female role should be in society. There were some vocal people who thought that women could accomplish and do more for the nation if they received an education because so few families provided education for their daughters. Most women in the early republic managed their household. They worked hard inside or out of their home to support their families in whatever way they could. So, Congress and the president are going to organize the executive and judicial branches of the government. So, once Washington takes office, it's his job to sort of form a government. And so, some precedents he sets are his cabinet. Now, a precedent, by definition, is an example for future action. And so, we talk about several precedents that George Washington establishes. And the first thing we're talking about is his cabinet of advisors. Now, it's a much larger group today, but as you can see in the three images here, Washington really only had three advisors. The first, pictured at the top, is the Secretary of Treasury, Alexander Hamilton. And the job of the Treasury Secretary is to handle all things financial and economic. Below Hamilton is Thomas Jefferson, our first Secretary of State. And our first Secretary of War is Henry Knox. Yes, Knoxville's named for him. So this is our first precedent or example for the future of a cabinet of advisors. Now on over to the judicial branch, the precedent that is first established is a law that Congress has passed called the Judiciary Act of 1789, which sets up the federal court system. It created three different levels of federal court. Sorry if my picture's here in the way. And that was the Supreme Court at the highest level, the Court of Appeals in the moderate, and then all, federal courts beginning at the lowest level, which is the district court, as you can see here. Here's a great image of the first cabinet. Washington's cabinet was comprised of members that kept him informed on political matters, and they debated important issues with one another. Each of the men chosen had experience that made him a wise choice to advise the nation's first president. By 1792, cabinet meetings were a common practice. So here you see Washington and his cabinet. In addition to the Secretary of State, Treasury, and War, you also see number 3 facing against the wall is the Attorney General, Edmund Randolph. And the Attorney General is a cabinet level position and advises the president on legal matters, of course. He wasn't present for the artist's drawing that day, so there's kind of a generic man to show his inclusiveness in the cabinet, although that is not Edmund Randolph himself. But the rest are likenesses of the other members of the cabinet. So we're going to kind of pause there and talk about expectations for the American people and this government because, of course, Washington does not represent, the majority of Americans at the time. Most Americans are middle, lower class human farmers. And so this map in 1790 kind of shows you the population density at the time. So, of course, the major cities of the Northeast, most people along the coast still, but you do see the frontier pushing back towards the Ohio rivers and past the Appalachian Mountains, which we've talked about in class. Population by 1790 is about 4 million here in America. Like I said, most Americans are farmers. They have expectations of fair tax laws, and they want the right to settle Western land. The merchants, laborers, and craftsmen of the East and in the cities, they really want the government to support their businesses, tax laws and trade laws that support American manufacturing and production. Our first national capital was in New York City, though it was known to be temporary. But New York was an obvious choice for the time because it was the city of trade and economic center of our nation at the time. Whiskey Rebellion is going to happen in a couple days. So hopefully this completes with all your notes. Don't forget about your cabinet assignment when you create it. Can't wait to hear those. And we'll touch back again tomorrow to complete some more notes. Thanks.